Tell us why you're doing this.
This is Operation Pull Up, more of a clandestine operation. We show up somewhere that is a key location. They don't expect us to come there. And then we disrupt business as usual. So that's what we're about to go do right now. Demanding justice for Renee Good and letting them know that this will not stand. They cannot pretend to be a house of God while harboring someone who is directing ICE agents to wreak havoc upon our community and who killed Renee Good, who almost killed a 6-month-old baby. Enough is enough. I am a reverend on top of being a lawyer and an activist. So I come here in the power of the Almighty God.
So we got to keep talking about good old Donnie Lemon or Don Lemon. This was something that I was going to cover a little bit more in length and not have a really short video about it and stuff. But when I heard the assistant, I think it's the Assistant Attorney General, Harmeet Dillon, state that we have the tools at our disposal, it gave me the impression that Don Lemon and the protesters that he was with or accompany, they do not have, I guess, the standing, possibly say the legal standing, like they are so confident about.
We all know what the federal judges are doing right now in Minnesota. We will pursue charges in this case. I see various crimes that have occurred. Exactly what they are, I'm not going to flag, but the FACE Act has been mentioned as one of the predicates there. In other cases, the Biden DOJ used the Klan Act conspiracy charges tacked on to the FACE Act in the case of protests outside abortion clinics to bring much longer sentences. So there are a number of tools available to us. Who funded this? What else? What other crimes may have occurred? Was there a use of the wires or the mails in preparing for this event? Did anyone cross state lines to do this? All of those are potential predicates for additional federal charges.
Meanwhile,
MAGA administration and the fake news MAGAs are losing their mind over something that's not even true. So let me just make it clear, because this assistant attorney general, I don't know, what's her name? It's something Hammett, Gillen or whatever. So I had no affiliation to that organization. I didn't even know they were going to this church until we followed them there. We were there chronicling protests. Once the protest started in the church, we did an act of journalism, which was report on it and talk to the people who were involved, which included the pastor, members of the church, and members of the organization. That's it. It's called journalism. First Amendment, all that stuff. For all of you people who believe in the First Amendment, absolutist, there you go. So why don't you talk to the actual person who is in charge of the organization and whose idea it was to have the protests at the church before you start blaming me for stuff for which you have no idea about. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Really comes down to Biden, like the Biden administration and what they did and how they utilized the law initially, for similar actions. A practice at the time frame that got a lot of scrutiny from Republican lawmakers and anti-abortion advocates. And they characterize the combination of those laws as, weaponization of the law, essentially. Now, the Trump administration is operating within that same framework. They're applying the same playbook established by the Biden administration to justify enhanced charges and longer sentences for defendants who fall within this scope. And I believe the BLM protester stated that the reasoning that they targeted this particular church was the fact is that they believe the pastor was, at that point in time, affiliated with ICE or working with ICE to enforce the laws and whatnot. And for Don Lemon to be a journalist and not look into this more and just really just dive into it head first. I don't know for sure if it was clickbait. I don't know for sure the reason why he was just trying to, prove a point with his leaning left politics to this particular group. So you about to find out. All of them about to find out, it appears to be. But I would say that, even if the claims were true, the framing still matters, okay? The BLM protest leader questioned how a pastor could support ICE, But the answer is straightforward. He is free to do so. And what is interesting enough is that you don't know the underlying circumstances. And the interesting thing about this is that you are taking this blanket statement about ICE, about anything that ICE does, and you're going in there and you're disrupting things. And you don't know if this particular pastor, if it is true, that was probably tied to a particular investigation that may have led to the apprehension of illegal immigrants that were committing crimes. Now, let's look on the flip side. Let's say that none of that's true. You have now put that pastor, his family, his church, congregation, or what may have you, especially with all the community backlash, you have put a target on their back now. It's just interesting to see is that maybe the consequences of these individuals' actions weren't really thought of. Like, you were just going in the name of protest. You were going in the name of so many different types of slogans, names from whomever at that point in time. So Don Lemon had a live the other day, and he went on live with D.L. Hughley, which is a comedian / activist. And they had a conversation about what has transpired. And Don Lemon was getting his point of view as well. Let's take a look at that real quick.
DL,
It's crazy.
so you saw what's happening, right? You probably know more about it than I do because I've been so busy all day. What do you think?
I do. I think this is an example of them perverting Dr. King's legacy and the history of civil rights and the history of race relations in this country to their own ends.
I would like to know his reasoning for that. That is intriguing. That is a very loaded, there's a lot of loaded language in there. I want to know why. I want to know why he feels this way. Hopefully he doesn't feel this way just because the charges or the investigation just gain more traction, and there's been some announcements on everything on Martin Luther King Day, which that shouldn't stop an investigation. Oh, it's a holiday. Well, we gotta take the day off.
Interesting that people are angry with you for, I guess Black Lives Matter found out that somebody associated with the church in St. Paul was the acting director of ICE, and Black Lives Matter staged the protest that you happened to cover.
We don't know that. If that's the case in this particular instance, we don't even know how anyone got this information. It seems like you immediately took the information that came from Black Lives Matter in this particular instance and just assumed that, oh yeah, because it's ICE, this must be right. This is a BLM protest leader. She must be right, without really verifying if this information was actually true. So I don't get it. But anyways, though.
But what's more interesting is Black Lives Matter was protecting and fighting for the rights of Renee Good, a white woman, while All Lives Matter were paying money to her murderer. And so it's just that we find ourselves,
Like that framing
and it
there.
is Dr. King's birthday, and we're honoring it. But we got to remember, Dr. King gave a speech.
Now, going back to this Black Lives Matter protest leader, who identifies herself as a reverend and applies divine authority to justify this form of protest. Religious belief does not override civil law. Let's get that clear. Okay. When the faith is invoked to justify conduct, that is, it raises legitimate concerns about unlawful intimidation at that point in time. Federal law defines domestic terrorism as criminal acts intended to intimidate civilians or influence government policy through coercion, standards referenced by the FBI and Department of Justice. Okay. The issue here is not religion, but if the conduct crosses over into unlawful coercion, okay, moral convictions does not exempt one's actions from legal scrutiny, nor does it prevent conduct from being assessed under existing statutes.
And we're honoring it. But we got to remember, Dr. King gave a speech. One of his famous speeches was a eulogy for the 4 Black girls that were killed in the Birmingham church bombing.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can't use church. They're angry at you using church for a speech, but Black churches have been bombed. In 1996, there were 200 Black churches that were burned. 12 years ago, Dylann Roof slaughtered 9 people at a church. So you can burn churches, you can shoot churches, you can bomb churches, but don't protest in churches. It's the craziest thing.
Wait, talk more about that. But don't protest the churches. I mean, they weren't so mad when you protested and bombed the black churches. So what are you saying explicitly, specifically?
I think Jesus protested in his temple. He protested in church. He didn't like the greed and corruption he saw. There are 2 times in the gospel Jesus protested twice. So if he can do it, you can too.
Yeah.
I think it's ironic that the very people who
let me just clear you real quick. I wasn't protesting. I was just reporting. I wasn't there.
Of course you weren't. Of course you weren't. I understand that. But you're going to have to explain that to Can you guys get my picture? I've never taken a picture with a classmate before. It's so crazy. Of course you were. But the more salient point is that the very people who are angry that protests erupted in church are the very people who tried to, this administration tried to get courts to allow them to arrest migrants in church.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to arrest them in church.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing about church is Jesus told us exactly how he wanted us to treat the stranger. He wanted us to feed them. He wanted to clothe them. He wanted to protect them. He didn't say, hey, after all that, throw them in vans and drive them to Venezuela. He didn't say that.
Yes, you're right. And look,
that is it's an interesting characterization of that. Hughley is saying is that Jesus wouldn't enforce immigration laws. He would love the people. I think that confuses moral teachings with civil governance. If he's referenced in the Bible, yes, Jesus spoke to how individuals should treat others, not how modern states administer borders or enforce statutes. That's stark difference there, Mr. Hughley. Now, compassion in the Bible does not abolish laws, okay? And it certainly doesn't map cleanly onto 21st century immigration policy. Projecting modern immigration debates onto ancient scriptures is definitely an emotional appeal. It has nothing to do with a legal or historical argument at that point. So you can argue for mercy and reform all you want to, all right? But invoking Jesus as proof that laws shouldn't be enforced is a category error, I would say. So there's more on his channel. There's more on his channel in regards to this particular situation that Mr. Don Lemon is in as of right now with these protesters. And I just think that Don Lemon should really blame the Biden administration, if anything, because this is the precedent that he set. And because this is the precedent that he set, the Trump administration is going to be like, all right, we're going to apply the same type of playbook here in this setting based upon the actions that were taken from Don Lemon and this particular group of protesters, or BLM protesters, I believe. Well, be safe out there. So what you guys think? Please comment, like, share, subscribe on Unaffiliated Mind. Until next time, deuces.